Good morning, everybody who is joining us this morning for our chit chat with Dr. Jan Hasbrouck. Good morning, Jan. I know it's good morning where you are because we've just had that conversation. Thank you for joining us from your home in Seattle, Washington. Welcome.
Thank you. It's so lovely to be here, and I'm getting so excited about right around the corner. I'm actually going to be in New Zealand, my first time in your beautiful country, so I'm very excited about that.
Yeah, it is exciting. And as I mentioned to you, I'm going to have to be sure to show you some of our beautiful sites in that tight time frame that
Yes.
you've got as you're jet setting from Australia to New Zealand and then back to Australia. So yeah, so welcome, Jan. It's fantastic to have you here with us again this morning. So for those of you who aren't familiar with Dr. Jan Hasbrouck's work, Dr. Jan Hasbrouck is a leading researcher, educational consultant, and author who works with schools in the US and internationally. Dr. Jan Hasbrouck worked as a reading specialist and coach for 15 years and later became a professor. Jan's research in reading fluency, academic assessment and interventions, and instructional coaching has been widely published. She is the author and co-author of several books, curriculum materials, and assessment tools. She continues to collaborate with researchers on projects related to reading assessment and intervention and enjoys volunteering at her grandson's K-8 school in Seattle. And I remember when you shared that with the attendees at one of your workshops at the Reading League conference in Syracuse, Jan, and everybody was just in awe thinking, oh my goodness, what a grandma to have as a parent help at your school. So yeah, that must be amazing to be able to give back and share all the knowledge that you have with that school community.
Well, if it's I get so much from that myself. It feels almost selfish in a way. It's just a great joy to spend time around children and watching that process of them learning to read and watching those who just sail along and it's so effortless, and then those children who
struggle.
we all know they bump up against this wall, and not just talking about those children or writing about those children, but actually being with them is a tremendous joy for me.
Awesome. So would you like to begin this morning, Jan, by sharing with us what is it that in your research and your work that really truly sits at the heart of reading fluency?
Reading fluency. Yes, when we think about this complex thing called reading, and then we narrow it down to components, reading fluency is a piece. We want our students not just to be able to read, but read well. Fluency is a part of that. And what sits at the real heart of it, I can think about two things, is that the purpose of fluency, the reason we care about it and the reason we want our students to be fluent is because of comprehension. So we could think that the heart of fluency is comprehension, but when we think about what fluency really is, and I think when most people think about fluency, they would say the heart of fluency, the core, the center of fluency is speed or rate. And actually, of course, that's part of it, but the heart of fluency is accuracy. The foundation, it all rests on accuracy. We want that accuracy to happen at a rate, a certain rate that allows comprehension. It always comes back to comprehension. Everything does. Phonics does, phonemic awareness. We should think of that in all of those things as being in service of comprehension. And motivation. We like to say that too. I think any of us who've worked with struggling readers know that if you're not fluent, motivation, being motivated to read is probably not going to be there. So fluency is certainly related to motivation as well. But at the heart of fluency, and it is a surprise to a lot of people, really is accuracy. And right there, right there it's rate or fluent or speed, but accuracy is the core.
Well, you can't have speed, can you, if you're not accurate and you're, or if you're kind of fumbling your way through, it's very difficult to have that speed. I just wrote down, we want that accuracy to happen at a rate that allows comprehension. That's such a beautiful way that you worded that, because it kind of has all of those aspects. How accurate is accurate enough, Jen?
That's a good question too. And thankfully, there are researchers who've helped us answer that, because we can talk generally, you need to be accurate enough to understand what you're reading, but most of us as professionals want some kind of guidance around numbers. And so we can say that it doesn't have to be 100%. We're talking about human beings who we're just not perfect at very many things, and we don't have to be perfect in reading. But I have found it very interesting, and kind of had to prove it to myself when I look at what the numbers the researchers have come up with, because they're so high. The research says that a reader has to be at least 95% accurate, and optimal accuracy is between 95 and 98%. And I remember first reading that and thinking, that can't be, that we have to be that accurate, really, in order to comprehend. But I've done some, exploring with that. I have activities in some of my workshops where I take a passage and make 5% or so of the words unfamiliar to people or too difficult to read. I mean, most people can decode even nonsense words, but they need to know what the meaning is. So it's accuracy in word identification and knowing what it means. But if you don't know what 5% of the words are, your comprehension is going to be compromised. So and then sometimes we say, it's not 100%, but sometimes we strive for 100%. If we as readers are reading really high stakes, I always think about things like the directions on a bottle of medicine. We want to be 100% accurate, like that. But for general reading, where comprehension is the goal, and sometimes our comprehension standards are lower. We're just reading for fun, we're skimming and scanning, we're just getting the gist of something. Maybe we don't need to be 95% accurate. But in general, when we want to understand what we've read, somewhere around 95 to 98% is what the researchers say we should be striving for.
Yeah. When you say that, because the number is so significant, and like you alluded to, so much really higher than probably what people potentially realize, it really has me going to the importance of, well, then how we teach these children to become that fluent, and that accurate as the heart of fluency really, really, really matters. And the stakes feel higher, Jan, because of the significance of that number, and the stakes feel higher to ultimately get to comprehension.
It's true. And actually, there's another layer of accuracy research that addresses specifically emerging readers, or those very beginning, our baby readers. The researchers there say we should be at minimum having those students read with 98%. That's their minimum. For an established reader, 95. But for the youngest reader, and the basic message behind that is, don't encourage students to read material where they're making lots of errors, because at that early stage, what they're going to do is start guessing.
Yes.
They're going to start questioning their decoding skills that we're teaching them. So like any human activity, when we're new at something, we start slowly and we just work on form and function, whether we're learning to play the piano, which finger goes on which key. That's the most important thing at the beginning. And then which key matches which note. It's so simple. Well, it's not simple. It's so basic. Yes. And it has to be slow. We emphasize the accuracy. If you're learning to play golf, or you're learning to play a musical, whatever your skill you're learning, you start with the form and the process.
Mm.
And in reading, that's decoding. How do we sound out the words or learn to recognize those high frequency irregular words?
Yeah.
But we want those young students to be especially accurate, because we're laying again that foundation for the future. So there's lots of talk, there has been in the last few years, about, which is correct too, it's a little bit of a dichotomy, about encouraging students to read complex text. And that is a very, very true and very important things that we should all be doing, but only, there's a big red light flashing warning, only after they're established readers. Only after they can read grade level text on their own at 95 and 98%. Then with instruction, not independently, but with instruction, we can up the difficulty of the text, and that improves their skill. We have good evidence about that, but that none of that applies to beginning readers. We don't work for complexity. We learn for setting that foundation of accuracy.
And I have this little thing going on in my head now when you were emphasizing accuracy. It's like, let's see it as a skill. When you were talking about, you know, the accuracy of your strokes if you're playing golf, or when you're learning, you know, the piano or whatever, you literally are learning a skill. And so we want to teach that skill. I don't want to say to perfection, but we want to teach that skill so that it becomes automatic and that it is correct as many times as possible.
Exactly. We want it automatic, but we only want it automatic if it's correct.
Exactly.
Because probably many of us have learned things incorrectly and then had to go back, and we either give up because we can't proceed if we've started out inaccurately. So we have to start with accuracy.
When teaching those emerging readers too, it takes a little bit longer because of that, right? You know, so it takes a little bit longer, I think, than how we used to teach them. Let's, Jan, go to you sharing a little bit about your 5 F's with us.
Oh, the 5 F's. The 5 F's, well, it ties right into what we're talking about, because the 5 F's are all about accuracy, in order to really try to emphasize this, because, I mean, we all think about fluency as being speed. So the 5 F's are about some little mnemonic to help reading teachers understand or remember that the whole thing is about accuracy. So the 5 F's are: first, accuracy is what we emphasize first. So when we're using, you know, with our emerging readers or any skill, first is the accuracy piece. So this is all about accuracy first. And then the second is foremost. It's the most important of the components of fluency, and rate is one of the components. Expression or prosody is one of the components. But if comprehension is the goal, accuracy is of foremost importance, because speed isn't going to get you to comprehension. So it's first, foremost, and forever. So it's not just we care about accuracy only at the beginning. We care about it forever, because it's the foundation of fluency. So there's the 5 F's. First, foremost, and forever. Accuracy is the foundation of fluency. So that's 5 F's.
When you were talking before about our emerging readers and the need for them to be really kind of hitting around that 98% accuracy, and we kind of want to go for what I'm going to say is like perfect practice and developing that strong skill so that it's automatic. When we think about and then you went on to say about how those students, once they get to sort of reading on grade level, then they can go into more complex text, because we know that they will potentially have enough mapped code on board to be able to, dare I say, self-teach or make those corrections. You know, they've got enough mapped there to draw from. But Jen, what about if we sit at, you know, just for a moment, thinking about our dyslexic readers? What would you say matters most for them? What matters most for them when we are teaching them to become readers?
Well, I think what I've gleaned from the research, and this is certainly an area of very active research going on. So we're learning more and more about who our dyslexic readers are, what dyslexia really is, and what are best practices. It seems to me that the convergence from that research is saying something that I think surprises a lot of people, and that is essentially that good reading instruction is good reading instruction, that we don't need, we thought we did when those wonderful pioneers of work in the field of dyslexia, where we really didn't understand at all what it was, tried some different ways of teaching reading that really did emphasize phonics and used a lot of good explicit systematic instruction, and they found it worked. But they were also doing on top of that some things around multisensory activities and things that all became sort of congealed together as this is the way we teach children with dyslexia. And now, as we have more research and better research, we've separated those things out and said, actually, what always worked about those methods was this part, the static, explicit, phonics, phonemic awareness, which for many of our children with dyslexia, that is where they need extraordinarily more than our neurotypical children. So all that we have learned about good reading instruction, that we need those 6 components. The National Reading Panel in the United States talked about 5 components, but that ignores the language piece of it. We need all of those things for any of us to become readers. We know that some children acquire those 5 things almost effortlessly. Most children benefit from some instruction. And many children really need instruction that is very systematically designed, explicitly delivered. Then our children with dyslexia just need more of that. They're going to take more time just because of the way that their brain functions around processing the phonology and the orthography. It's just that part of their brain, and it really, as we've learned too, it does not affect intelligence. We can have gifted genius level people who have dyslexia. We can have, most dyslexic would probably be in the average, because most of us are in the average range of intelligence, and it can be children whose general cognitive processes are very limited, can also have dyslexia. Dyslexia is completely separate from intelligence. But what they need at the end is good instruction, just more of it, more intensity, more duration. So that speaks to another really important, when you're talking about what's most important for our students with dyslexia, the everybody's wish, if you care about those children as deeply as I do for a variety of reasons, and the research, early identification and intervention. Get those brains wired, because that's what good instruction does. It rewires the brain. And the earlier we start with that, we don't have to unwire or unlearn. Children can be successful from the beginning. That's a huge thing with our children with dyslexia too, is they face so much failure from day one of their earliest academics. Let's learn the alphabet. They have difficulty with that. So they've had, by the time to get to 2nd grade, 3rd grade, they've had so much failure. And we all know as human beings what failure feels like. So we want to avoid the failure. We want to avoid the mislearning. So that's our hope. It's our dream. We also know realities is we don't always find these children really early. So we've got older kids, but we should always put that out there, because that should be our goal.
So when we think about, our system within schools, and I'm sure it's the same for what you wish for in Seattle, given what you've said and about the early, and I did write down early 3 times.
I think I said it 3 times.
Early identification and intervention really the most effective and efficient way is that for every classroom teacher to be teaching those students using good instruction, / best instruction according to the research around, what you've just been sharing about how the brain learns to read, and that focus on building the skill of accuracy.
That's right. That's right. And then we need to also think about, I just finished writing writing a book with Nancy Young. It's a 2-year project and called Climbing the Ladder of Reading and Writing. And it was a wonderful collaboration with Nancy and myself and many other authors. I think we worked with 25 other authors. But Nancy is very focused in her work about the children who easily climb the ladder of reading and writing, those children who are advanced in reading. And we need to she's helped me really remember to consider those children in the classroom too. And in volunteering work, I did this year assess all the kindergarten students who were coming into that school. And I did find one of those advanced readers, this little kindergarten boy, and this was in the 2nd or 3rd week of school, who could read high school level text. He's 5 years old. He can't really understand everything but he can easily read 3 and 4 syllable words. So we need to be aware that I mean, he's an extreme example, but those children do exist. It would be malpractice, unconscionable to put that child through a basic phonics phonemic awareness program. It could be damaging to him. People say, oh, what's good for some is necessary for all. That's just not true. We have to treat this more like the nuances of medicine. Something like insulin, we all need it. Some of us produce it naturally, but giving insulin to some people is absolutely necessary and life-saving, but giving it to everybody just because it's good for some is not true. And we need to be thinking about that. Most children are going to need a certain amount of that kind of instruction. And when we deliver it explicitly and systematically, most children do the best. Some children are going to need a lot of that. And some children need very, very little, perhaps targeted not around reading. That child knows how to read. But maybe spelling and writing, we find a lot of kids who are advanced in reading still need some support with spelling and writing. So it's just, the more we know, the more complicated this stuff gets.
That is so true.
It's very rare that we can say one size fits all.
But we can take from that some important things, such as the screening of those children on school entry, which comes back to the early identification. What are the key components we must be looking for on entry to school? And then, once they've been at school for a short period of time, that's what kind of screams at me when you were talking that, that thank goodness you did identify that particular child, Jan, and then I guess another thing is teacher knowledge and practice around implementation. And I don't know if I said I was going to say 2 things, but I'm going to say 3. And the third thing then is obviously the teacher's ability to notice, or I always say observe, notice, respond. Observe, notice, respond. So, we want to ensure, don't we, that our teachers actually are equipped to be able to adjust their delivery, because literacy instruction should be based on pedagogical knowledge, not following a program. Because like you say, all those children, they may be dyslexic, they may be hyperlexic, they may be gifted, not that our dyslexic and hyperlexic students can't be, but there is such a range sitting in front of us.
That's right. Yeah. It is rocket science, as somebody said, or more complex than rocket science or brain surgery. It is extraordinarily complex. So
and
the
I
more
always say too, that's why we need to upskill our teaching workforce, because actually they're the ones that can do that noticing the best. You know, like a computer program cannot notice all the nuances of a child when they're working with them, particularly those children who might be right at the top and might be kind of at the bottom of the ladder. I just want to share this, Jan, we have one of our New Zealand colleagues is stocking your new book, your collab with Nancy, which is exciting. So J&J Literacy here in New Zealand do stock that. So I'm just having a bit of a shout out to them because it's really awesome that's going to be easily accessible for our readers here in New Zealand. Yeah,
that's
so
wonderful to hear.
It's pretty cool. We've just got a couple of minutes left, Jan. So what we've talked about is you've shared with us that accuracy sits at the heart of reading fluency, and I'm really looking forward to exploring strategies around building accuracy with you more when we've got our workshops coming up. You shared with us about the importance of how accurate is enough. So, you know, kind of I'm taking from that 95% as our minimum for comprehension, but for our emerging readers, you really stress the importance of us understanding that it's more kind of we need to be looking at that sort of 98%. We don't want to let students read materials that allow them to guess. So that's a little something that I'm going to take away from that piece that you shared with us. You shared with us your 5 F's. First, accuracy, and then foremost, accuracy is of foremost importance. Forever, we don't just want to be accurate for a little bit and then kind of let that measure of accuracy drop off, either in our kind of assessment measures or in the practice and skill level that we're instilling in our readers. Foundation, and then fluency. Then we move to talking a little bit about our dyslexic readers, and you really, really hammered home very succinctly and very quickly that good reading instruction is good reading instruction. And we need to understand the importance of early identification and instruction. And we also, though, want to keep in mind that like you said, what is right for all isn't necessarily always, you know, kind of that case. Let's not lump everybody into that one bracket. And you mentioned that that's a really key reminder for you across the last 2 years of work that you've been doing with Nancy, because she does fight that good fight for the 5% of children who sit at the top of the ladder. Yeah. So if you could have one sort of parting word in terms of advocating or messaging to teachers here in New Zealand and potentially further afield around reading fluency in our dyslexic students, what would your message to them be, Jan?
I think the overall message is not just about fluency. Fluency is a component of reading, but I think the message we all as educators need to take to heart and truly believe, because it is true, is that almost all children can be taught to read quite successfully. And the number that the researchers are settling on is about 95%. You know, we would love to think about 100%, but there are cognitive limitations on being able to read. There are children who are born who are never going to have that ability, but that's a very, very small percentage. Teachers need to believe that 95% of their children, no matter what their background is at home, what their native language is, certainly life circumstances make learning to read and write easier or harder. But despite outside influences, including poverty or dyslexia or ADHD or all of those things, teaching makes the difference. And it's we should be aiming for 95% of our children off to the next grade with the foundational skill set of that grade, at least 95. In the earlier grades, we can probably even make it a little bit higher. But if we don't believe that, if teachers don't believe that, and I'm still encountering colleagues who just don't. Oh, those kids can't because of their parents, or they can't because of this or that. They're dismissing the opportunity. We need to believe, because it's true. It's not just let's hope. This is factual. And that's what I want teachers to know and believe, and school leaders and everyone involved in this, professors. Let's start there. Let's know that that's what we should be aiming for. Any child that we are unable to help, that's on us, not on their parents, not on society. That's my message.
Thank you. That's such an important message to hammer home, because it is true. I always say, if not you, then who? And I think that kind of merges really nicely with the messaging that you're giving as well. Jan, we're really, really excited to be bringing you to New Zealand in March as part of your sort of, I'm going to say, Australasia schedule.
Okay.
You global jet setter, you. Really, really looking forward to that, and having you in Christchurch on the 12th of March for a full day. I'm myself really, really excited about having a day with you to go deep in these areas. Being fortunate enough to attend your session at the Reading League conference, I'm super excited. I know what a dynamic presenter you are, and I'm going to say you kept me at the edge of my seat and engaged. Yeah, and I'm really, really excited about you coming to New Zealand. So for those people who are keen to get to see Jan, be sure to head to our website to register for that event. But we have actually got a giveaway going at the moment. So we will draw our giveaway on the end of this week on Friday for 2 lucky people to attend Jan's workshop, one in Auckland and one in Christchurch on the 12th and then the 14th of March. So yeah, exciting times. Thank you so much, Jan. For everybody who is about to kick into starting the new school year, we wish you all the very best as you get back to it. Our next chit chat, I'm hoping, is going to be with Dr. Katie Pace-Miles. I hope I've got that right, which I also met her at the Reading League conference, Jan, and she's going to spend some time with us talking about sight words and the acquisition of sight words, and I'm kind of saying sight words in inverted commas. So I know you get my drift there. So yeah, have a fantastic beginning of year, everybody, and we look forward to seeing you soon, perhaps with Jan in person or back here at another chit chat.